Hello, and welcome back to the Cinema Lounge. My name is Garrett Inman. I am your host today and forever. And this is the Cinema Lounge podcast where we chill and talk about movies or TV shows. Like in today's episode, I am all dressed up. I honestly have no idea why. I'm out here looking like Junior Soprano right now with the little cabbie hat and the suit and the tie and whatnot. I don't know. I try whenever I can. I like to dress up something representing what I'm talking about. So like when I talk about a Marvel movie, I try to either bust out the Captain America hat or I got like this shirt, excuse me, and then I got a Hydra hat that I sometimes try to wear, although I think I lost it. I don't see it on my hat rack, so I might have lost it. But I try to wear something representing what I'm talking about when I can. So today we're talking about The Sopranos. This is kind of like when you look up pictures from The Sopranos, usually it's scenes when they're at a funeral or something like that, because a lot of people die in this show. A lot of people get married, so a lot of people wear suits and ties, and that's kind of like the traditional Soprano Mafia get up. This is my go-to nice hat, which is a cabbie hat, and that's something Junior Soprano wears quite a bit. So I was just like, might as well just like wear something to be like, I look like I'm a soprano, yeah. Hey, what you talking about, huh? Where's my money? That's more like a pimp, not a soprano, but still. Today we're talking about The Sopranos, and usually I would say, first let's get into the weekly headlines. I've stopped doing that. And I think once I get more time, I will get back into talking about some of this week's headlines, because there has been some news, specifically with like the Mario movie announcing their cast with like Chris Pratt playing Mario and all that kind of stuff. Jack Black being Bowser. And with all that, I was like, I really want to talk about this and comment on it. And I'm trying to figure out a way how I can just exclusively make a show or make an episode or make it just videos or whatever and post them wherever. Just talking about kind of the biggest headlines of the week and just giving an hour and a half dedicated specifically to the headlines, so I'm not having to rush through that to get to the main content, which was kind of the biggest issue I was running into incorporating it into this podcast, this show, because it was like, oh yeah, well, we have like 5 headlines for the week that we're going to have to limit ourselves to. Just give quick opinions on it so we can rush into the main meat of the show. And I was like, some weeks there's some movie news that just like really gets me wanting to talk and kind of rant or something. The Mario stuff was part of it. Not really an angry rant, but just kind of like a rant roast type deal. So I might start doing that, but once I get more time, I'm getting very busy with schoolwork, and setting aside time just to do this every week has been a little harder than it has been over the summer, but I enjoy doing it, so I'm going to make some time to do this, plus it's a good mental break, because school is getting overwhelming. I'm rewriting a script for my film production class, which has been entirely stressful. We have to run an entire production from beginning to end, doing basically everything ourselves, and it has been stressful as crap, especially since I was not into the story I was doing, and I finally came up with the story I really actually wanted to tell. So now I'm writing the script for that 2 days before I have to turn in a shot list. So that's been stressful, and that's why I'm not really like putting a lot of time into trying to develop this a little better, just because I don't really have that kind of time. But I promise once we get into November, December, I'm going to try to put some more time into this, maybe make a separate either live stream on Twitch or just a separate episode talking exclusively about the news for the week. And I have a couple of other ideas that I'm floating around that I kind of want to add either into the show and make it audio exclusive, or put on the YouTube channel and kind of encourage people to go bounce from platform to platform. If you want to listen to audio only podcast, that's fine, but if you go to the YouTube channel, you're going to have this there to also kind of benefit and incentivize the people only listening on certain platforms to kind of jump to other platforms, just to get a taste of the different feel and vibe from this, I guess. I don't know. That was just a little rant. But yeah, that's something I'm looking at doing. The main thing, and I don't know if I want to talk about it or make it a surprise, but there's been kind of a couple YouTube channels that I really enjoy watching that do something that I was just sitting here going, this is prime for just podcast style stuff. They don't do it for podcasts, they do it for the YouTube channel, and they sell like full versions on their own website. But I think it would be fun to just put that out in a podcast format and make it like a bonus episode every other week, once a week, something. But I'm going to keep that a little on the wraps. We'll see. I want to make it a bit more of a surprise, just in case there's some intrigue there. But yeah, that's kind of the life updates, house cleaning, or house maintenance, whatever you want to call it. Or just me rambling. Also, my room is the hottest room in the house I live in. I always turn off the fan because it makes an annoying sound before I start recording. And so if it starts to get hot, I'm shedding all the clothes I'm wearing right now, because this is a hot freaking room and this is a hot freaking suit. So before I start taking off my clothes, before I do that, let's talk about The Sopranos. The Sopranos, first off, the reason I'm talking about The Sopranos this week, first off, see, this is what happens when you're tired, you're stressed, and you're in a hot, bloody room with a hot, bloody suit. But I binge watched all of The Sopranos this summer. I think I started maybe May, June-ish, and I just started binge watching the crap out of the show. I was going to try to watch it a little, well-paced, but my issue is that I am a binge watcher by nature, and if I get hooked into a show, I'm going to start watching the crap out of it. So I finished watching all 6 seasons of The Sopranos in about 2 to 3 months. I watched a lot of it. Also, I have no life, so it's easy for me to do. But I watched it, and I was just I was floored, to be honest. I know there's some people who aren't a huge fan of this show, aren't a fan of how it ended or certain characters. And I was floored by how much I really loved every character. There wasn't a character that I hated that the show didn't want me to hate. There wasn't a character that got on my nerves too much. You could see where everyone was coming from. And if you're gonna, my favorite show of all time is Breaking Bad. If you're gonna have one criticism of Breaking Bad, it's that Skyler is a bit of an unreasonable. You know the word I'm talking about. She's a bit of an unreasonable hag. I'm going to try to keep it a little PG. I might slip into some PG-13isms. We'll see. But she doesn't come off as feeling understanding towards Walter, or you don't, at least from when I watched it, she doesn't feel like she was coming from a place of reality or from somewhere human. She just seemed like she was a nagging person and just why are you out all the time? I guess you must be cheating on me, so I'm gonna go cheat on my ex. Cheat on you with my ex and all this stuff. And she could get annoying from time to time. The Sopranos, for me, didn't do that. Carmella Soprano, she felt like a fleshed out character. She was struggling, but she was trying to work with Tony. She wasn't just abandoning him at first opportunity. In season 1, she had a chance to cheat on him with her priest, and both of them mutually decided to cut that off before it could go any further. They knew they were about to slip up, and both of them cut it off because obviously Father Phil was dedicated to the cloth, and Carmella was dedicated to her husband. Only after I think 4 to 5 seasons did she finally get fed up with his bullcrap and cut him off. The other thing that makes it work for her is that she's fully aware of everything Tony's doing, or at the very least is fully aware of everything he could be doing every time he goes out at night. She's fully aware that he has his gumars and cheating on her with them. She's fully aware of the fact that he's a mafia mob boss and that he probably sanctions killings or kills people himself every night. So that's something that she's fully aware of. So her putting up with it and then finally breaking feels real, where Skylar was like, yeah, first opportunity I get, I'm leaving this man. And it felt like it was an abusive relationship, somewhat. And I'm not saying that to knock Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad is still my favorite show of all time. This is my second favorite show of all time. And the only thing that brings it down for me is I don't think the storytelling is quite on par with Breaking Bad is an excellent rise and fall for Walter White, rising in power but falling in morality, and you see that full tragic arc come to completion, where The Sopranos is kind of just day-to-day slice of life type stuff, where there's just kind of these kind of, what's it called? Annoyances that keep popping up from time to time, or characters who pop into Tony's life cause some trouble for him before popping back out. And there's not like this giant complete arc over the course of the show. You could maybe talk about how Tony's relationship with his family is kind of a complete arc, but it's not really like the main focus of we're taking steps towards coming back together. It's more just a day in the life or 6 years in the life of a New Jersey mobster. And for me, I much prefer complete arcs of stories rather than slice of life type stuff. But this show obviously still worked for me because it is my second favorite show of all time. That is all to say, go back to what I was talking about, binge watching. The reason I was binge watching this show is The Many Saints of Newark is coming out this year. It's actually coming out this Friday. I would highly recommend going to see it. I haven't seen it myself. I'm going to see this crap opening weekend regardless of my homework and stuff, because I just love this show so much. B, the cast looks amazing. They're getting James Gandolfini's son to play Tony Soprano, young Tony Soprano, and James Gandolfini was the guy who played older Tony, so that just, it feels right. The cast looks amazing. I think, John Bernthal, Leslie Odom Jr., I forget his name, but the guy who's playing Christopher's dad, and then man, I'm awful with names. The guy from Goodfellas. I literally just, hold on, I just had his name on the top of my head and I completely forgot it. That's gonna bother me. This is why I have a computer. The Many Saints of Newark. Ray Liotta. There we go. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot his name. Ray Liotta is a freaking great actor. He needs to be in more stuff, to be honest. Everything I've seen him in, he's been amazing in. But yeah, Leslie Odom Jr., John Bernthal, Alessandro Nivola as Dickie Maltasanti, who is a very big player in the show in terms of this figure that looms over Tony and Christopher the entire 6th season. Like, Dickie's dead by the time the show starts. And so Dickie exists as a character in order to inform the audience of how Tony and Chris grew up together and were shaped. And this movie's kind of going to inform that, which I think is great. You got Corey Stoll and Vera Farmiga. Like, really great cast. Also, Alessandro Nivola, I think he's a very underrated actor. He's been in some good stuff. If you haven't seen The Art of Self-Defense from 2019, I think that's a very underrated movie from that year. And I think he was fantastic in it. But yeah, so the show as a whole, like I keep saying, is my second favorite show of all time. And why it gets that high up for me is that this show has one of, if not the best ensemble casts of any television show I've ever seen. And the reason I say that is every character feels at the very least fleshed out to some extent. And that's everyone from the main cast to the supporting cast to the guest characters. I mean, they have episodes where you just meet one-off characters and you kind of get a feel for their life and who they are, or their struggles. There's an entire episode that revolves around Tony harassing a soccer coach because he's moving to Rhode Island. And this guy is just like, yeah, I got a good job offer and I want to do what's right and provide for my family. But Tony and Silvio are just like, nah, you got to coach our girls, you know? Like, you're a really good coach. We want you to stay, so we are going to vaguely threaten you and have Paulie over here bring a flat screen TV into your driveway, which is, I think that's become an iconic scene from the show, is just Paulie, like, sitting here with two guys behind him with a giant flat screen TV. I recently saw that in a meme. I forget what it was making fun of, but that's the other thing. For whatever reason this year, the Sopranos meme culture has kind of blown up, bringing it back to the forefront, at the very least, of internet culture, which I really like, because it's great to watch a show and then suddenly that show becomes a part of the meme culture or rejoins or gains prominence within internet culture. So you're watching people edit these scenes or put them into these memes or whatever. And it's really cool to just be like, oh, yeah, I know where that's from. You know, it adds an extra layer to enjoyment of going online and just seeing people just try to be funny and all that stuff. And you can go, oh, yeah, I know where that's from. I keep pointing back to whenever I watch Person of Interest, which is also one of my favorite shows ever made. There was a scene in a church where one of the Samaritan agents is sitting there waiting for our main characters. Root comes in, points a gun to the back of her head, and I think it was Jeremy, who's also a bad guy, walks in and then puts a gun to her head, and then John Reese like signals him or whatever, and he's behind him with a freaking sniper rifle. That became a meme, and I said, ah, yes, I know where that came from. I don't know. I find just slight joy in the weirdest and smallest of things, and you know what? I think that's how you should live life. Just find joy in the smallest and stupidest things, and your soul will be fine. But yeah, I mean, every character in the show feels at the very least real, and I love characters that feel that, even if they have limited screen time. I mean, I have an entire list of kind of main members of the ensemble cast. I obviously can't talk about all of them because it's such a huge and expansive cast. But I do want to talk about our main characters. You got Tony Soprano. Tony Soprano has slowly become one of my favorite, if not my favorite, television character ever. Because he is such a messed up individual. He's what Walter White ended up becoming at the end of Breaking Bad. He is this guy who's just messed up. He has almost no morality to him, even though he has a code of conduct. And a lot of this is just kind of business. He's an excellent businessman. He's street smart. He knows how to run things. The entire season 1 was him fighting with his uncle for control over the New Jersey mob after the Don dies, and Tony ends up getting his wish by kind of manipulating events to getting Junior to win this war, essentially, but it ends up becoming this puppet for Tony. Stuff like that is freaking great, where he's smart, he's intelligent, he knows how to work the system and work the streets, but he doesn't know how to operate within his own family. He tries his best to keep wooing Carmella over with extravagant gifts or physical affection, but clearly a relationship's supposed to be more than that. He tries to connect to his kids, but he only knows what his father and his uncle and what Dickie Maltasanti raised him as, which was to be aggressive, to yell at your kids every time AJ messes up. His first response is he wants to hit him, he wants to scream, and wants to yell at him. Whenever Meadow messes up, he knows you don't hit a woman, but he still wants to scream and yell at him. He doesn't know how to connect on this emotional, visceral level. But you can tell he loves them. For the first few seasons, he doesn't really even tell them about his lifestyle. He wants them to believe that he's a garbage man, that he runs a garbage truck company, because he doesn't want his kids to have anything to do with that life. But as he raises his kids, Meadow goes off to college, AJ continues to fail in school, and he realizes that AJ is going to become a lot like him. AJ becomes a reflection of Tony, which I'm sure you're going to see in the Many Saints of Newark, is that as a kid, Tony was super similar to AJ, and how this kind of cycled back, and now AJ's suddenly going to have to, Tony's going to have to make this decision to either make AJ kind of his successor or try to continue to push him down some alternative lifestyle. And the main thing that I really like about Tony is that Tony is portrayed as someone who wrestles with his mentality. Like, he's almost mentally ill. He's not like traditionally like that, but he struggles with anxiety, depression. He gets borderline suicidal at times. The first episode is about him raising ducks that just randomly ended up in his backyard, and then once they got better and flew away, he got really depressed and became completely unproductive. He gains these attachments to the most innocent of things. And I think part of that is this underlying, I really want to be a good person. I'm really trying hard to be a good person. And a lot of the times it's animals, but just the simple innocent things in life he gets attached to. And every time it leaves, it destroys him. Season 4, a large storyline of season 4 is about him buying this racehorse called Pyomai. He loves this horse. He loves seeing it win. He gets invested in its races, gets super into the betting, but he starts to kind of get a connection with this horse. He like goes as far to paint a picture of himself with the horse, which is something I one day want to friggin' hang up, because it's an excellent looking painting that just like represents the humanity that could be underneath Tony's hard exterior. Like, he's smiling, he's happy. You don't really get to see him just pure joy a lot in the show. Should I spoil it? I kind of want to spoil it, but something happens with the horse, with Pyomai, that is really, really bad, like really tragic, and it causes Tony to break, and he ends up killing someone who, like, he was working really close with. Granted, not like a good person, but still, like, it completely breaks Tony to where he breaks the rules of the mafia, and suddenly now he's gonna be on trial for his actions. And just so many scenes where he goes to the therapist, or it's him talking with Dr. Melfi, who's another main character in the show, and just talking about what his past, talking about what he's feeling, and really delving underneath the surface of this guy who wants to be this traditionally masculine mob boss, when really he's a weak and vulnerable man just trying to survive in life. And that really, like, he becomes such just a character you can resonate with and get behind, even though he is probably one of, if not the morally worst person on the show. Probably not the worst. There are a couple of characters who are just, like, evil. He's not quite evil, but he's just this self-destructive, self-loathing, depressed man trying to get through life, to provide for his family, and do things the way that he was raised to be. He constantly talks about not John Wayne, but a similar actor who was very much known as being kind of this traditionally all-American super sigma male. And he keeps talking about, like, what happened to those types of guys? Like, why can't we be more like him? He keeps reminiscing about the John Wayne types and wanting to be like them, but when in reality he tries, but he's never going to be like that because of who he is. And that just makes him such a recognizable character. One of my favorite scenes that, like, where he discusses his dreams. His dreams are also a pretty big part of the show, especially in the earlier seasons. Is in season 1, he's talking to Dr. Melfi and just describing this dream he has that just gets super weird. And they managed to take a scene where a man is describing how he can detach his ding-a-ling and freaking spin it in the air or whatnot, and like how a seagull takes it from him and he's trying to get his ding-a-ling back from his seagull. They managed to take a scene where this man is talking about that and make it so emotionally resonant in terms of what it represents and how they describe it to you. How you can really feel with Tony, even though it's this ridiculously over the top in bizarre thing he's describing. But yeah, like I said, I mean, I ranted about the main character of the show for about 20 minutes. So, yeah, Tony is hands down, like, at least top 5, top 3 maybe, maybe even number 1 favorite television characters ever. But the rest of the cast is freaking amazing too. I'm not going to go as deep into them because I also kind of described some of them. Carmella, like I said earlier, she's like the Skylar White of the show, but with her, you feel for her because she's putting up with a lot of this nonsense. She's just trying to go along with it because, well, I guess that's just kind of how it is. Well, I know Tony's constantly going out with these gumas and, you know, that's just how these guys do it. That's how the mafia guys do it. But the minute he starts going out with this sophisticated woman, that's when I'm scared. Like, season 2 is about her getting into fights with Tony because Tony has moved on from, like, his from Irina and women like that who are kind of just not prostitutes, but women who clearly are not of means and are really only doing this for the money to provide for themselves or to help their siblings or whatever. But then he starts going after a woman who is in a well-established job. She doesn't really need the money. She only goes out with Tony because she vibes with Tony, she connects with Tony, and suddenly that is becoming an emotional affair as well. And that's where Carmella gets into fights with Tony. But so a lot of it is just like Carmella is putting up with a lot, and when it finally just all this tension builds up and finally snaps, you can't blame her. You can't really blame her for wanting to get away from Tony, but she constantly comes back to him because he completes her and she completes him, and it's just this weird, twisted, not straight up abusive, but just like neglectful relationship that somehow can't work if they're apart. And it's this really strange and relationship that you kind of get into a little bit, and it's hard to take sides because you end up liking both characters so much. Carmella also starts to have to get a little violent, get a little brutal with certain characters as the show goes on. She has to show her mafia capo Don's wife viciousness, which is really fun to see. Another character, Christopher Maltasanti. Tony's my favorite of the show. Christopher's definitely my second. Christopher is just such an empathetic character. He's this young up-and-comer. Tony's, I think, nephew, but they also call each other cousins, and it's explained in the show at a certain point because it gets confusing for other characters as well. But nevertheless, both of them share this like deep past, deep history. They grew up together. They love each other as family. But Chris is reckless. Chris also, unlike Tony, unlike AJ, and some of these other characters, Christopher's really only doing this because that's kind of how it is, but he has aspirations outside of the mafia. Unlike Tony does this because it is what it is, and he doesn't really do anything outside of it because of familial loyalty and Italian American loyalty to the game. Chris is loyal. He does this more out of his love for Tony, out of his love for his mafia brothers, but he tries his best to pursue other projects, other things that are more legit, that can actually help him and help his girlfriend and later on fiance Adriana. First season is all about him trying to write a movie and pitch it. And there's an episode where he spends an entire day with Jon Favreau, director of Iron Man, only to have Jon Favreau rip him off and steal his script idea, which I found hilarious because it's not every day you get to see actors and directors portray themselves in shows and movies, and it's not every day, and it's even less common to see these people portray themselves, and their selves in the show or in the movie are just pretentious douchebags or a-holes or whatever, like people who are portrayed as just like, wow, I never want to speak or meet Jon Favreau ever, because he just is an unoriginal hack who steals ideas from people who pitch him stories. Like, I just find that a fun little addition to the show. And later on, Ben Kingsley actually comes in, I think in the final season, or either the 5th or 6th season, because the script Christopher Maltasanti is working on in the first season, he kind of gives up on it after Jon Favreau steals his ideas, and tries to help Adriana break into the music industry. He's trying all these different avenues. He encourages her to open up a bar, and I think it's like a bar club type deal. He's very supportive of her in that, but he's also he has the temper of Tony, but not the self-control, because he also hits Adriana. He's physically abusive towards her, and he eventually manages to get this movie pitched and puts it into production. He pitches it to Carmine Jr., who is the son of the New York Don, who is kind of attached, but not like, he doesn't do a lot in the mafia space. He's kind of just like a rich guy who just kind of loves being rich, and he only really comes in whenever it's needed to have a sit down between the New York and the New Jersey mob. But Carmine Jr. and Christopher Maltasanti go into production for this movie, and they approach Ben Kingsley about it. Ben Kingsley is portrayed as a pretentious douchebag, who's just like, oh, yeah, sure, yeah, what's your name again? Oh, Chris, okay, yeah, just very dismissive of him, which I found entertaining. But they finally get the movie done, and it's like this horror movie about essentially Tony Soprano. Chris insists it's not about him, but it kind of is, which adds some more friction. And in the final season, in the final couple seasons, Chris becomes like a drug addict, and he's on the road to recovery, but he's also still like a mafia boss, and he's surrounded by people who drink and smoke all the time. So he has to struggle with a group of friends who isn't really supportive of him, which leads to a very tragic downfall, that something that I didn't see coming, and something that was just like horrifying to watch a bit, because in the end, the people he thought were his friends and his family cared more about the mob and the business of the mob than him. Really kind of like showing the true colors of how the mob and the mafia, they say they're brothers. They act like they're brothers. They act like they're a fraternity type stuff. But when push comes to shove, they're going to choose the organization over you. And that's just really sad. But yeah, you got AJ, Meadow, Tony, and Carmella's kids. I'm not going to spend too much time on them, but AJ is kind of like, at the beginning, he's kind of ignorant to a lot of Tony's comings and goings. He's a bit stupid, a bit dull. And he eventually starts to grow up, at first he's like, oh wow, my dad's a capo in the mafia. He's a mafia don. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. Until he like realizes, oh, my dad's just still a douchebag. So he kind of becomes a bit rebellious, trying to find his place in the world, going out with girls, trying to go to college, trying to find a proper job that he feels passionate about. Does he want to be an event planner? Is he going to try to just sell drugs or be a vandal? Is he going to join his dad in the business? And all these kind of questions plague over his mind, making him a very troubled child, to where he could have easily been a brat that you just hate, but like seeing the life that he lives with his family makes him more tolerable as kind of the bratty child as he grows up. Meadow is a little harder because she's a bit brattier from the beginning. She kind of has an idea of who Tony is and what he does. But what makes it to where she's not that annoying or hateable for me, a character that I really enjoy, is that she's too smart for her own good. She's very intelligent. She's definitely someone who's going places, and she's gained this passion for helping those less fortunate than her. She's a very charitable, giving person, but she lives with a family who's very opportunistic and predatory. So it creates this natural conflict, especially when Tony has this traditional view of the way the world works, in terms of this, traditional John Wayne type masculinity, that then clashes with her up and coming, like, kind of new, more modern way of thinking, in terms of the things that men and women can do, and the way the world works, and how it's kind of old guard versus new guard, and you can kind of see where both of them are coming from on that. But then she goes off to college, she starts dating Finn, and their relationship feels real. But yeah, she's also kind of not in the show as much as the other characters. She kind of just comes in to argue with Tony and Carmella, which kind of makes it to where it's like, okay, Meadow, we get it. But still, I think she's a really good character all around. You got Dr. Melfi, who a lot of the times only serves to be kind of Tony's therapist, but I will say she has one of the greatest episodes in the show where, I think it's in season 3, she's attacked by a man, and the entire episode is her trying to grapple with the fact that she really wants to sick Tony on him, and she has to kind of decide what she wants to do with that, whether she's strong enough to take it on her own, or if she's going to need to accept the help of this wild animal dog. And you also get her in therapy with her therapist talking about her feelings on Tony, where this guy's kind of an outsider looking in with this more fantastical and fictional view of Tony, the great Tony Soprano, slick mob boss Al Capone type, getting really into like the whole, honestly, he kind of represents what would become of this whole like crime podcast fad, where people are just like, oh yeah, I gotta learn everything I can about every certain criminal case out there, and create these fictional, almost like to this extent of folklore with criminal cases or criminals even, where if it weren't for podcasts or this obsession, we wouldn't really care about, or I wouldn't say wouldn't care about, but we wouldn't continuously talk about the Boston Unabomber or Charles Manson and that kind of stuff, where it's like these are infamous names that will continue living forever. Al Capone, Bonnie and Clyde, Osama bin Laden, like all these names are going to continue to live in infamy because people continue to like create this folklore around them and lift them up as these like they're the Joker or Scarecrow or whatever, but they're real life evil people who did evil things. And kind of like this guy represents this outsider view of crime, where it's like you want to get more fantastical and fictionalized with it, and kind of make these like, exaggerated figurehead versions of these criminals, and I found that to be interesting. Melfi, I wish they did give her a little bit more to do, but in terms of the stuff she does get, where she's she's kind of having to deal with these upper scale people constantly talking about her client behind his back, but to her face, and how the upper class people are just like look down on Tony Soprano, but also kind of go, well, isn't it true? Like, he cut off a dude's head and fed it to fish, or stuff like that, where she's kind of caught in the middle. I really enjoyed that. Silvio and Paulie, great side characters. Both of them are kind of just henchmen. They get a couple chances to shine. Silvio gets to be boss for a day. Paulie it's Paulie. Both of them just are there to kind of crack the one-liners. Paulie gets a bit more to do with his mother going into the retirement home, figuring out something about his family's past in the later end of the show. But both of them are just really fun characters to have around that kind of balance out the seriousness and the aggressiveness. And they're both kind of just the stereotypical, like, hey, yo, type mobsters to kind of serve as more comic relief. But they still have great episodes. I mean, Paulie participated in one of, if not the best episode of the show, which is Pine's Barren in season 3, where him and Christopher Maltasanti get abandoned out in the woods and try to survive while bickering with each other. It's great. Next you got Junior Soprano, who is the uncle to Tony. I didn't know where they were going to go with him, because I knew he was in the show for a while, but after season 1 he felt unnecessary a bit, because he rose to prominence, gets arrested, and then the next 3 seasons kind of deal with his criminal proceedings, where he's having to wear an ankle bracelet, he's going to court, but in the middle of the court, the trials, there's a revelation, and you can see he kind of starts to develop either like dementia or something like that, where suddenly his mind's not all there, and you really want to hate him for the crap he does sometimes. I mean, there's an episode where he does something completely unforgivable because of his mind to Tony, and Tony doesn't forgive him for the rest of the show. And they have a final scene together that wraps up and concludes their relationship really well, but it doesn't feel entirely satisfying, and it's just kind of Tony having to give in and realize, like, yeah, there's no way for me to get any satisfaction out of this, and eventually just kind of accepting the situation they're both in. And it's just a very heartbreaking, just kind of like, you build him up to be this like old goofy wacky guy, and just to see him kind of each season become worse and worse, it's hard to watch sometimes, I guess. But really great character. I love Junior. I mean, top 5 characters, I guess, of the show. I don't know. After Tony and Christopher, it's kind of hard for me to rank some of these characters, but Junior's definitely up there. Another character who's up there, you got Bobby Bakala. He's just kind of the good-natured guy who's brought in to help Junior in season 2 after the other guy in season 1 kind of goes away after Mikey kind of just goes, yeah, Evan, no, we're not doing this. But Bobby's such a good, he is the only, he's probably like morally the only character who's constantly just like the good guy. He's constantly just like, yeah, I'm just here to help you out, Junior. I'm here to help you and my dad. There's an episode revolving around Bobby's dad having to like go in and kill one of his proteges, and it is a great episode that revolves around a single one-off character. But it was fantastic. Bobby's put through the ringer over and over and over again. The way his relationship with Janice kind of spawns, I think, was well done. And also, speaking of which, Janice, she starts out as this unlikable woman, but she eventually gets worn down, and I think her kind of starting up a friendship and stuff with Bobby really works in her favor, where she's desperately trying to help Bobby out, trying to help Junior out, and eventually it stops becoming about trying to steal the inheritance money away from Tony and becomes more about, no, I think I actually care about these people, this family that I have. So she sticks around. She comes in explicitly to just take inheritance money away, but sticks around, and I really appreciated that. But yeah, Bobby Janice, great. Adriana, one of my favorite characters as well. A really great character where she kind of starts out and she's just kind of just a waitress at Artie's restaurant, and she just kind of also takes, a lot of these characters take like these tragic arcs, and I think hers is one of the worst, is one of the best in terms of execution, but one of the most heartbreaking worst in terms of wrecking your feelings and just going, oh, jeez. To where it ends up, she ends up getting like pigeonholed by the FBI, who become major players in the show, and she starts getting put into situations where she's trying to figure out what the right thing to do is for her and for Chris, and it just becomes this, not game, but there's just this situation where she's frantically trying to work her way out of what she's in, and just seeing her scramble around. She's not like a particularly smart person. She's not like Tony. If Tony was put in the situation she was in, he would have started executing plans and planning crap out, putting pawns on the table. But because Adriana doesn't know what to do, she's just scrambling, and just seeing her dig herself into a deeper hole is really hard to watch, and it's really sad. You got Johnny Sack, the main guy from New York. The more you get to know about him, the more you're just like, yeah, Johnny's a pretty cool dude. Like, the talks he has with Tony, he's the only guy in the entire show who has a wife who seems to genuinely love her, which is crazy. Like, yeah, Tony loves Carmella in his own way. Paulie's not married. Silvio loves his wife in his own way, but Johnny is the only guy, I'm pretty sure, who doesn't have a Gumar. You don't see him talking about Gumars or like, oh, I'm going to go to the strip club and try to find one of the strippers to, like, I don't know, go home with and start dating and to give money to. No, he's ride and die for his wife, warts and all. She, I think after they got married, she got a little overweight, but he loves her all the same. He doesn't care about that. They help each other out. They only get in one fight the entire show, and just seeing how he's the only guy who seems to have his entire home life together while being a mob guy just is great to see, and is a great balance to just the chaotic nature of all the dudes in New Jersey, and he's just up in New York like, yeah, I'm just like, we're gonna kill some folks, and do illicit activity. But at the end of the day, I'm going to go home to my wife. She's going to cook me a meal. I'm going to say I love you. She's going to say I love me back. We're going to kiss. Our daughter's going to come home, and we're going to hug her and embrace her like we love her genuinely. He's going to support his daughter's marriage. And it's like, it's strangely wholesome, and I kind of love it. You got Phil Leotardo, who becomes the main villain, main antagonist of the last 2 seasons of the show. The way I would split the show up is that the first 2 seasons deal with mostly two kind of antagonists. The next 2 seasons deals with another antagonist, and then 5 and 6 deals with Phil. Phil is kind of this wild card from New York who tries to take over from Johnny, and he's a lot more rigid and strict and intense, and I love him. He like in one of his first scenes, he just attacks this woman trying to do collections for her capo, and he just comes in, like, beats up her bodyguard, puts a bullet to her head, or puts a gun to her head, clicks, and he goes, shoot, well, looks like I'm out of bullets. You better watch out next time, though. That's a scene that just stuck with me, where he just, like, he does not care. He's gonna get the job done, do whatever it takes to do what he thinks will benefit the mob. And yeah, the way that conflict ends up, I felt was very fitting. You got Big P. I don't know if you can say the word on YouTube or whatever. But you got Big P. What's his name? Sal. Who is kind of serves as sort of our main antagonist for the first 2 seasons, sort of, where he's a childhood friend. He's actually going to be in the Many Saints of Newark movie, but he's a childhood friend of Tony's, and especially season 2, he becomes a character that I really love, where he's also put into an impossible situation, and there's a scene where he's like acting normal at AJ's kind of coronation party, and he goes into the bathroom and just cries, and it's such a depressing moment because you know that he's not a particularly bright guy, and he's really just doing what he's doing to help him and his I think it's his son out. He genuinely loves and cares for the people around him, and tries to treat them right, tries to treat them well, but because he's a victim to his circumstances, and he's too proud to admit he needs help, he just traps himself in this situation to where it comes to a point where you just know, yeah, I don't think he's gonna get out of this, you know? And he just becomes this character I really identified with, I really loved and empathized for, and he kind of becomes, he's sort of our main antagonist for the first 2 seasons, or at least season 2. The other like main antagonists, there's not really main antagonists or stuff, it's just kind of these characters, but what would serve as our main antagonist, Livia Soprano, who is Tony's mother, kind of also serves as our main antagonist for the first 2 seasons, where she inadvertently gets a hit called on Tony in season 1. She's constantly nagging them and just playing these mind games. And what I love about her is that she's so incredibly unlikable, but you don't know if it's an act, because she's so old. She seems like she might be far gone. She might not be in her right mind. She's in an old folks home. But the way she talks to Tony and Janice and the people around her, and kind of manipulates the people around her, you don't know if she's just an absent-minded woman just kind of letting crap spill out and just like causing so many problems for those around her, or if she's just like, if she's really this master manipulator and just pitting people against each other because she just because she can. And just trying to figure that out is so good, and I wish that she stuck around longer in the show. But unfortunately, the actress who portrayed Olivia died after season 2 came out. So it was really hard. You know, you can't really just continue to use her. So they dedicated an episode to her in season 3, wrapping up her and Tony's relationship, and just kind of like as a final goodbye, which, while sad and like a good goodbye for the actress, the final episode that like wraps up her storyline, it's so fitting. There's all the characters sitting in a room struggling to figure out good things to say about her, and people are just silent, and then I think it was either Carmella or her dad just suddenly like start roasting her and talking about how awful of a person she was. And I'm just like, that is such a good way to like pay homage and say like goodbye to the actress, while also going, but her character, it was such a awful piece of garbage. And it's just, it was a perfect episode that just represented everything that Olivia was. And I love it. And then our main villain for seasons 3 and 4 was Ralphie Sifuretto, who is the evilest character in this freaking show. He does some irredeemable crap. I mentioned the stuff with Pio Mai earlier. There's an episode where one of his Gumars gets pregnant, and the way he reacts to that is awful. There's a scene where I'm pretty sure he almost shoots the bodyguard's eye out just because he can. Like, he's this wave of chaos and instability. He pokes and prods Tony in just the right ways, and yeah, his character is so freaking good. And fun fact, I think the guy who plays Eugene was originally going to be cast, or the guy who plays Eugene was originally, I think, going to be a much bigger player. And then they found or what am I trying to say? The guy who plays Eugene in the show, he was originally cast as Ralphie, I think. And then Joe Pantaneo came in and said, no, I want to do it. And so they gave Joe Ralphie's role, and he became a main series regular. But because they hired the guy on who plays Eugene as a series regular, Eugene was a series regular in season 3, got dropped down until season 6, and got pushed back up, which I find funny. But yeah, speaking of Eugene, I'm going to run through the rest of these characters. These are like smaller characters that I feel like are just complete the world. Eugene is kind of there in the background since season 3. He rounds out kind of just the background mob guys who are constantly coming in and helping. But like most of these characters, he gets a chance in the spotlight beginning of season 6. He gets like a 2-episode arc that really like instantly makes you feel for him. You want to get behind what he's doing. He's a character that wants to do something better with his life. Patsy is the type of dude who's just like, he's the only guy who's not like, hey, yo, loud mouthed, overly mafia-ish. He's just a dude, he's just kind of like a normal guy that like, he's the only one who's going to walk up to you on the street and shake your hand and be like, hey, how's it going? How's the wife? How's the kids? Yeah, calmly pulls a gun, shoots you in the head, and just walks off. Like, he's the only guy who can kind of just like just slip in and out of a room and you'd probably never notice because he's just so charismatic and kind of does whatever. He comes in, I think at the beginning of season 2, if I remember right, in like one episode. I think it's season 2. He comes in just kind of as this character you don't think about all that much. He has a bit of an arc in his first couple of appearances, and then he kind of disappears into the background before being brought up to prominence, and you go, all right, now Patsy's pretty sweet. Vito comes in as once again another yo type mafia guy, but then you start to peel back the layers of him in season 5, and in season 6 he becomes this massive catalyst for the war between Phil and Tony. He's really the cause of this. And Vito gets like a really excellent arc where he goes and chills in Rhode Island, meets some new people, before realizing where he thinks he belongs, trying to escape, before realizing he's got to come back. Artie is kind of just this doofus, goofy guy, who kind of like season 1 you get a lot of drama with him, but after that it's just kind of, hey, it's Artie. He's kind of another comic relief type character, really fun. Furio comes in for a few seasons. He was stuck around longer than I thought he would, but he's this dude from Italy who starts to make advances on Carmella, which isn't really cool. But he's just this genuinely nice guy who treats Carmella right, treats the people around him right, but he's also not afraid to unleash the fury. Oh. You got Hesh, the Jewish, I think he's like an accountant or banker for Tony and the mafia, the New Jersey mob. He kind of just comes in to hang out with the crew from time to time, but he gets a couple good episodes to shine. Benny, once again another character who is in the background but continues to be brought into prominence. Agent Harris is our main guy with the FBI, who's just has a really good banter with Tony, who eventually kind of comes around to going, yeah, I'm going to root for the Sopranos in this war against Phil. And then once again, Carmine Jr. is just kind of like, just this charismatic dude who just kind of comes in and goes, yeah, dude, guys, I got like this mansion I'm chilling at. Can we just like wrap this up? I just want there to be peace, and I love it. All the actors do a great job in all these roles. I know I'm already almost an hour into this, and I'm still talking about the great characters of this show. I mean, that's how good this show is that this entire ensemble, just is so freaking good, and that's why you don't really need this overarching story to like delve into the mysteries or what. No, it's just a bunch of like awful people doing awful things to each other, but they're all such good fleshed out characters. Like I said earlier, the way I would group the seasons is the first 2 seasons I would call them the big P years, and then the next 2 seasons are the Ralphie years, and then 5 and 6 are the Phil years, where those are kind of the big. That's the big thing Tony has to deal with. The first 2 seasons is dealing with Livia and Big P. The season 3 and 4 is dealing with Ralphie. Season 5 and 6 is dealing with Phil. And I mean, I kind of touched on a lot of this. The standouts are the Pyomai arc, the Big P and his struggles arc, Livia in general. You got Phil's war, the war between New York and New Jersey. So much of it is so freaking good. And then let me talk about some of just the big staples of the show. First off, there are some trippy elements. I did not expect there to be dream sequences. There's the most notable one to me is where Tony dreams that he's talking to Big P as a fish. And Big P as the fish is talking to Tony, and Tony's like slowly kind of figuring out some stuff, and it becomes kind of the ultimate climax of Tony realizing something about Big P that really sets him up for his downfall. But there's a lot of sequences like that where Tony just has these weird dreams and all this kind of stuff, but it's not like over the top and trippy. It's just more subdued and presented matter-of-factly, which I just found really interesting and engaging. Tony also has that connection with animals on top of the ducks and Pyomai. There's a season where he deals with a bear being in the backyard. But yeah, let's talk about the 6th season real quick, because this is kind of like the big conversation thing. Season 6, I think, wrapped up all of our arcs perfectly, where most characters kind of meet their downfall one way or another, mostly as a result of trying to find life outside of the mafia. Right, I mentioned how Eugene gets a couple episodes to contemplate his decisions and wanting to move out, how Vito runs away. A lot of characters in season 6 realize that the life they have chosen is not a good life, is not a life that should be built upon, and season 6 really just highlights, like, these guys realize what they're doing isn't right, and at the end of the day, a lot of them can't escape it anymore. So a lot of them, it's just too late, and they have to commit or die. And so seeing a lot of these characters finally get the realization, but far too late, is tragic. But it's such a good way to end the show, to just watch these characters slowly kind of die and get picked off as the season goes on. Finally getting that catalyst between Phil and Tony, to where the second half of the season is all about Tony and Phil going to war with each other. But ultimately, you got the ending, and a good show nails its ending. Breaking Bad nailed its ending. If you haven't seen it, I'm not going to spoil it for you, because this ain't about Breaking Bad. But this show, in my opinion, I think nails its ending. Usually endings are kind of like hit or miss. I think like Green Arrow, its ending was solid. It's not anything spectacular, but I think it was solid. A good homage to what the show was. Lost, it was a bit of a miss. I didn't hate it as much as most people, but it was definitely just kind of a thing where it was way too vague and was just kind of like, I don't feel all that satisfied, but I really liked how that last shot reflected the first shot of the show. With this show, it has gotten highly divisive. Depending on who you ask, it's on the level of like Dexter last episode. The last episode of Dexter was garbage. It was awful. That entire last season was awful, but that last episode is the worst of them all. People put The Sopranos on that list. I don't know why I was looking this up, but one day I just decided to look up. I think it was after I watched Lost, because I knew Lost was notorious, and I didn't quite hate it. And I was like, oh, top 10 worst endings to any TV show. Dexter popped up. What else? Maybe Cheers or something was like that. There's one of those older, like, sitcom shows that popped up. And The Sopranos was on that list. But then I look at IMDb, and it has like a 9.2 out of 10, and I read the reviews, and people are like eating it up and loving it. So clearly there's this discourse between, I think, more critics hated the way it ended and thought it blue-balled you, and there were people who watched the show, got super into it, and were just like, no, this is perfect. This is a perfect way to end it. And I watched it, and I said, you know what? I feel blue-balled, but like, I strangely like it. Like, I don't feel satisfied with the way Tony and his family ended up, because you don't know. It's a completely ambiguous ending that just kind of like encourages you to start looking at that last scene closely. It's them all coming to a diner to sit down together, and then I think like a beeping or a timer hits and like cuts off music. But you see people walking into the bar, sitting down, and you start looking at them really closely. Is this Tony's allies, or they're his foes, or just random civilians? Me personally, and this is where you can have the discussions. I guess spoilers for for The Sopranos, a show that's older than myself. But the way it ends, I think Tony at the very least, Tony dies. Because you kind of have this like beeping, and I think if I remember right, he kind of turns to his right and it cuts to black. There's a guy who walks in before Meadow and kind of goes into the bathroom. And then once Meadow sits down, that's when it cuts off. I think that guy going to the bathroom was sent there to kill Tony. And I think that's like Tony dies right then, and the show ends on the bullet going through Tony's head, killing him, because The Sopranos was about The Sopranos. It was about Tony Soprano. And if Tony Soprano isn't going to be alive anymore, then what's the point in continuing on with the story? That's where Tony's story ends. So that's where the show ends. And I think that's the way it felt like it was portrayed. I know David, what's his name? David whatever. The guy who created the show basically said, yeah, no, this is the way I wanted to end it. You know, I'm not going to tell you what it meant or anything like that. It was supposed to be entertaining. This is what ended up coming out of my head. And that's the way it is. He's not trying to provoke people. He just wanted to tell an entertaining story. So it's kind of fun to speculate on what that meant, because the guy who did it wasn't trying to make any deep meaning or anything like that. Just tell a story, which is why I'm thinking he's trying to tell a story, the story of Tony Soprano. And if Tony Soprano's dead, there is no story of Tony Soprano. So the story ends when the bullet enters his head. Thus, he died. Thank you, everyone. No, I'm kidding. But that's the way I view it, and I think it's a perfect way to end the show. But yeah, no, The Sopranos. Bottom line, The Sopranos is my second favorite show of all time. I love the characters. Clearly, I talked about them for straight up an hour, not even addressing some of the story stuff, but it has one of the best ensemble casts ever assembled in television, and I think you can really identify with a lot of the characters. A lot of them are so freaking iconic. Paulie and Silvio's one-liners, Tony's deep emotional and mental struggles, Carmella's domestic disputes, AJ's troubled upbringing, freaking Christopher's fall from grace, Johnny's wholesome family dynamics, Big P's struggles with his situations in life, Adriana desperately trying to cling on to what she loves, makes you just feel for these characters and get involved in their stories. So if you haven't seen The Sopranos, clearly it's too late to binge it before the movie comes out, but I highly encourage you guys to watch it. I will say it is rated TV MA. It is in fact an HBO show. And if you're familiar with like Game of Thrones, clearly that's like should be your expectations going into it. Foul-mouthed mafia guys who are like really, like it's a show about criminals and degenerates. Like, go in with your expectations that HBO is going to depict that in as realistic of a way as possible. There are going to be disturbing imagery, unsettling imagery, distasteful imagery. What's the word I was going to use? I forgot. I lost the word. But all that to say, degenerate. There it is. Degenerate imagery. There is going to be all of that. Your stomach will probably churn at one point or another, depending on the values you hold as a human being. But that is also the way in which the criminal world works. And that is the way in which these guys' world works. And I think it depicts it very fairly. So, yeah. If you haven't seen Sopranos, highly encourage it. If you are like, I don't know, 17, 18 or older, if your parents will let you watch it, I guess. But I encourage you to watch it if you are of the age to properly watch it. And if you have, let me know in the comments below. Clearly, I love this show. I'm excited for the movie. Can't wait to go see it this weekend. That is all I have for you today. Let's wrap up with the weekly recommendations, because this episode is getting kind of long, and I gotta edit this and start rewriting a script. So, my weekly recommendations for the week, we got Young Frankenstein. I watched this movie for the first time a couple days ago. It is a Mel Brooks comedy parody thing. First off, Mel Brooks is a comedic genius. Spaceballs, History of the World Part 1. Never to Have a Part 2. What else has he done? I completely forget. But he is someone who I find to be hilarious. I love his style. I love how just tongue-in-cheek he is, how willing he is to just kind of mess around with crap and break the fourth wall when necessary. And I just really enjoyed this movie. It's very funny, just like, there's actually like a character arc here, which I found interesting. Usually with Mel Brooks movies, it's just absurdity to the highest order, and there is still that, but Dr. Frankenstein or Frankenstein or whatever he wants to call himself, actually kind of goes through a bit of an arc where he wants to reject his family and his legacy, and ultimately coming to accept that, but in the worst of ways. Tap dancing monster was fantastic. But yeah, it was a great movie. Loved it. Highly recommend it. It's on HBO Max. Next, Wolf of Wall Street. We were just talking about a bunch of degenerates. These are a bunch of degenerates, but on the other end of the spectrum. Instead of seedy criminal degenerates, we got a bunch of high-class suit and tie, elite, high-rise degenerates. Dudes who are at the very top and can't think of anything else to do besides throw midgets at dartboards, bring monkeys into the office, crap like that. This is another very degenerate movie, so, you're warned about that. But for me, I really enjoyed seeing this guy kind of being like presented as a rags to riches type movie, but it's through the perspective of a guy who just like is only in it for himself. He's a wolf. He doesn't give a crap about other people. He just wants to take money from them to fund his own lifestyle, and seeing that kind of blowback in his face, I think Leonardo DiCaprio definitely deserved an Oscar for this performance. But Jonah Hill is great in it. Margot Robbie is great in it. It is really crazy to see this cast of people in a Scorsese movie, because I don't think many of them were in one or have ever been in one besides DiCaprio. I don't think Margot Robbie or Jonah Hill or anyone else have really like had prominent roles. What's his name? Kyle Chamberlain have been in like these bigger roles in Scorsese movies, so it's kind of cool to see them operate in a Scorsese world, and it's great. I love it. A little long and a little degenerate, but I think it's well made and it does what it's trying to do. Next, I'm going to recommend you my so bad it's good recommendation. This poster, first off, looks so much cooler than the movie actually ended up being. It's Virus Shark. I encourage you to look up the poster if you're listening on audio only, because the poster actually looks pretty dope. Like, it looks like it'll be like a Deep Blue Sea type movie where it's not going to be like the best, but it's going to be some fun schlock. It is not that, but it is still very entertaining, at least to me. It is the perfect so bad it's good movie of the year. It is about these scientists trying to extract a virus from a shark to cure the virus up top. Because in a C-19 world, every crappy movie's got to capitalize on it. But what makes this movie so freaking entertaining to me is that it looks like a bunch of high school teachers just grabbed a camera and filmed it over the weekend and then just kind of schlopped it together for their kids, for their students, so their students would think they're cool. First off, if that's what happened, I guarantee none of their students thought they were cool. They just got laughed out of their classrooms. But B, the guy who directed this has been in the freaking industry for like 20-something, like since 89, I think. 87, 89. He's been in the industry since the 80s. And he's making crap like this that looks like it was just teachers at their local high school filming some like really low tier garbage movie, if you can even call it that. But the line delivery's awful. The main lady can't act to save her life. It's one of those movies you just kind of got to watch it and go, how did this get made? Why was this made? But I'm kind of entertained. If you're over 21, definitely a movie to get a drink to. Get whacked out of your freaking minds and just go, what am I watching? And I love it for that. But it is also one of the worst. Well, it is the worst movie I've ever seen this year, but it's not my least favorite. I kind of like it. So yeah, I would highly recommend at the very least Young Frankenstein. If you have the stomach for it, watch Wolf of Wall Street. And if you have the tolerance or the patience for it, or if you just really like watching atrocious, so bad it's good movies, Virus Shark is definitely up there. It's not as good as The Room or Velocipaster or Who Killed Captain Alex, which I will still maintain is the best so bad it's good movie, that it loops back around to being bad, loops back around to being good. That I will forever adore Who Killed Captain Alex, but I might one day make an entire episode about it. That is the only so bad it's good movie that I'm convinced is actually good without the so bad, but it's still so bad it's good because it looks like it. It is a movie I am continuously impressed with, that I have such admiration for those filmmakers. And one day I will probably make an entire episode about it because I just love the movie so much. And if the new ideas that I want to pursue that I mentioned at the top of the podcast, that is definitely going to be one of those movies I'm going to pursue with because it's such a great time watching it. That has been today's episode of the Cinema Lounge podcast. We went a little long here talking about The Sopranos, considering it is a 6-season television show with about 90-something episodes, a butt ton of main characters. I didn't even talk about some of them, like Jackie Aprile Jr., certain characters like that kind of got pushed to the wayside. Steve Buscemi's in it. I forgot to mention that. There's so much to talk about. So, it might be one of those shows I revisit at some point or talk about more in depth with better notes. But yeah, go watch The Sopranos. Go watch the weekly recommendations. Do whatever you freaking want because I'm just some guy on the internet. You have free will. But yeah, check us out everywhere. If you're watching us on YouTube, smash that like button. Gingerly and lightly touch the subscribe button. You don't want to hurt it or offend it or accidentally press it twice and unsubscribe from me. Hit the notification bell. Leave a comment down below. What are your thoughts of The Sopranos? Did you like the ending? That's an interesting thing I want to hear from you. Did you like the ending of The Sopranos? Do you like The Sopranos at all? Have you seen it? Are you excited for the movie? Let me know all that down below. Follow us, subscribe to us on Rumble. I think you leave Rumbles on there. Leave Rumbles on Rumble. Comment down below the same things. Follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the good stuff. Leave us a 5-star reviews on all audio-only podcasts. And yeah, follow us on Instagram at The Cinema Lounge. I keep forgetting to promote that, where I post at most twice a week because I'm not good at the social media game, but I try my best. And yeah, that has been today's episode of the Cinema Lounge podcast. I've been your host, Garrett Inman, and today we chilled, and talked about The Sopranos. I hope you have a good day. I love you all. And always remember... Daggone, I really need to prepare for these better. I really need to prepare for these better. Golly, and the Sopranos is a show where you can endlessly quote from. Always remember, you don't have to fall in line with how you're raised. You can choose your own destiny. Because usually... crime never pays, and it sucks for the criminals in the end. I don't know. Good life advice. This has been the Cinema Lounge podcast. I love you all. Have a good night. And yeah! Bye-bye. Woke up this morning, got yourself a gun. Wearing shorts!